I don't know if I'm going to piss off a few people saying this, but I think sister location is Hi there to all lovely people watching this video. My name's 𝗪𝗡𝗡𝗏, but you guys can call me Kay, and in today's video we're doing something a little different. I'm stepping away from the keyboard and giving myself a break from playing horror games to instead talk about one of my favourite horror game franchises, and you've probably already guessed it by the title of this video. That's right, today we're talking about Five Nights at Freddy's, or better put, I'm going to be ranking all of the Five Nights at Freddy's games. So you might be sat there thinking, well, why does my ranking matter? This video has been done countless times before already. To tell you the truth, my ranking doesn't matter. This is just my personal opinion after all. But before you click off this video, let me tempt you into staying by saying this. I feel that my ranking is potentially one of the most controversial rankings of the games that you will see. With that being said, let's get to ranking one of the most popular horror game franchises of all time. Okay, so we're going to go in order of chronological release of the games, not in keeping with the story, because let's face it, most of the story is just a theory. So I'm going to explain this list here. It's pretty self-explanatory, obviously masterpiece, good, bad, but I also included a section saying not my thing, because I think that's important, that a game cannot be your thing, but that doesn't mean that it's a bad game. Because I think there is some games in here that are good, but I just personally don't enjoy myself. And with that being said, let's get to ranking the Five Nights at Freddy's games, starting us off with Five Nights at Freddy's 1, which came out in 2014, which, my god, that makes me feel old. 14-year-old me started playing this game and I thought it was super scary and very unique to any other horror game that I'd seen or played before. So I feel because of that, the first Five Nights at Freddy's still holds up now. Might be a little bit dated, like mechanics-wise, it's a lot slower than obviously the more recent games, but I still think it's a good game, so I think it's going to have to go in good. I think putting it in any of the other categories would be an injustice to where it is the game that started the franchise off, and it's still a good game at this stage, despite it being less scary than maybe it was 10 years ago. Okay, moving on to Five Nights at Freddy's 2. This might be where it gets a bit controversial. I'm not the biggest fan of Five Nights at Freddy's 2. I'm not really sure what it is about it. It just never really caught my attention, apart from the designs of like Mangle and Withered Bonnie. I think those two really stood out to me. But the rest of them, I think they're fine. I don't mind like the toy animatronics, they look fine. But I think at the time when FNAF was like this new, unique horror game, it was quite unusual to see these very cutesy designed animatronics, and I think that put me off at the time. I don't necessarily think it's a bad game, I just think it's not really my thing. I don't really love the element of the music box, but then again, I don't really like it in the FNAF games when there is too much to do. I think it takes away from the scare factor, it feels a bit tedious, and I think you kind of lose that element of being scared because you're more frustrated in playing the game than you are, playing it in fear. And I think I really enjoy it more when FNAF focuses on the fear elements to the game more than the challenge. I know there's a lot of people who enjoy the challenge of the FNAF games. It's personally just not for me. So I think that means Five Nights at Freddy's 2 is going to have to go in not my thing. Okay, moving on to Five Nights at Freddy's 3. I feel like the universal opinion for this game is not good. I'm not sure if I'm wrong about that. Please let me know down in the comments below that if I am. But I feel like it wasn't received well when it first came out, and I can really understand why. I personally think it's one of the weaker games. The jump scares really lack. I think Scott tried to do something different and it didn't necessarily work very well. I love the concept and I loved the focus on Springtrap, and I do really love his design. I think he looks a little goofy sometimes, but when that first came out and it revealed that we were going to be dealing with Springtrap, it sent people wild, and personally I was so excited to see Springtrap in a game and him be one of the animatronics that's like coming after you. So I think it's hard to rank this game because I do love the element of finally getting to see Springtrap and see that suit. I just kind of wish it had been scarier. It's literally made a meme about Springtrap's jump scares because they're just not scary at all. He kind of just steps into a frame. It's a bit laughable at this point.
Did I jump scare you? Yeah, I bet I did. You coward.
So I think this game was really disappointing because it had a lot of potential, but I just don't think it hit the mark. So I'm going to put it in bad. I think I still would play it again, but in regards to a Five Nights at Freddy's game, I think it is one of the weaker ones, so it's gonna be in bad. Sorry, Five Nights at Freddy's 3. With that being said, let's move on to Five Nights at Freddy's 4. This was the game that scared me the most at the time. I felt like it had the scariest animatronic designs out of the games that had come out, and I really love the atmosphere and the setting of this game. This is probably one of my favourite Five Nights at Freddy's games. I feel like it just does it really well. I'm not really sure if that's a shared opinion in the fandom, but I personally really enjoyed the mechanics of this game too, and I just think this is a good game overall. It does what a Five Nights at Freddy's game is supposed to do. It's quite simple, it's scary, the atmosphere is really good. So I'm gonna put this in... I'm stuck between masterpiece and good. I think I might leave it Five Nights at Freddy's 4 in good, because it is still very similar to the other games and it doesn't necessarily do anything that stands out. Obviously it changes it up a little bit where you're not in an office and you're in a house instead, and you're running back and forth between the doors, which I really do love, but I still don't think it's that different from the other games, so it's going to stay in good and not in masterpiece, sadly. Okay, so let's move on to FNAF World. I'm not really sure how people feel about FNAF World. I personally am not a fan at all. I've never actually played it, so I don't know if that has an effect on the validity of my opinion, but this never stood out to me. I wasn't really a fan of like the whole cutesy animatronics. I mean, they do look cute, you know, not going to deny that, but I really love FNAF at its scariest. It's like true diving into horror, so this game just was not for me. So I think I'm going to put it in would not play again, even though I haven't played it, because I've got no interest in playing it whatsoever. And I'm sorry if you like FNAF World, it's just not for me. Okay, so moving on to Sister Location. I don't know if I'm going to piss off a few people saying this, but I think Sister Location is one of the best FNAF games that there is. It is my personal favourite. I think it's a fantastic game. I think it really stood out among the games. It really did something different that FNAF has never done before. I love the story. I love the animatronic designs. I think this game just gets it so right in every single element. I think the only critique I would give it is some of the gameplay maybe isn't as fun as the other games, but I still really enjoy it. I think it's one of the scary games out of FNAF games, but I've seen people really not like this game, and if you're one of those people, please let me know down in the comments below why you maybe don't like it, because I'm really curious to know why people don't like it, because I love it so much. So for me, Sister Location is going straight in masterpiece, and I feel like that might piss some people off, so if it does, I'm really sorry, but that is where Sister Location is going for me. Okay, moving on to FNAF Pizzeria Simulator. This was a FNAF game that really went under my radar for a long time. When it first came out, I didn't really pay attention to it. I didn't love the look of the gameplay, so I just never bothered with it. And until very recently, I watched a playthrough of it and I was very surprised at how much I actually did enjoy it. It was not what I was expecting at all. And I do think it is a really good FNAF game. It's very different from the games prior to this, and yet at the same time, you still get that same FNAF formula nearer the end. And I do quite like this game. I think it's got different things that people can enjoy. It's got the typical FNAF formula nearer the end, but then it's also got some new game mechanics for us to try, and I think it does that really well. The main critique that I will give this game is that I'm not a huge fan of some of the animatronic designs. Yes, I'm looking at you, Scrap Trap. Which has basically become a meme at this point because how bad that design is. It's probably single-handedly the worst animatronic design. He just looks really bad and not scary at all. But I still think this is a good game overall, despite not being a huge fan of some of the designs, so I'm going to put it in good. I feel like I've not experienced the game enough to give it a negative rating, because from what I've seen, I've really enjoyed, and I think overall it seems like a really good FNAF game. Okay, moving on to Ultimate Custom Night. I don't want to spend too much time on this game because I feel like it's a very simple concept. Obviously, you play against what animatronics you want, at what difficult setting you want, so I think it is a good game. It's quite nice to be able to, you know, go against different animatronics that maybe wouldn't normally be together, so I'm going to put it in good. I think that's a fair place to put it. It does what it says basically in the title of the game, and I do think it's a good game overall, so it's staying in good. And now let's move on to Help Wanted, which is obviously the first VR FNAF game, which is obviously absolutely terrifying. Any FNAF game in VR is going to be scary, personally to me anyway. And I think this just is a good game overall. It's really fun to play and yet scary at the same time, and I just think it's great to see FNAF in the VR world. It makes it so much scarier, so I'm going to put the very first Help Wanted in good. Hi, post editor me here. I'm not really sure what's happened, but I've had some technical difficulties with the footage for just the ranking of Curse the Dreadbear, oddly enough. So I'll be back on the screen in just a moment, but apologies for this. However, let's continue with the list. So the Curse of Dreadbear is the Halloween DLC to Help Wanted, so the game is very similar in format to the first VR game, but obviously with Halloween themes going on instead and some spooky themed games. I don't necessarily think this is a bad game. I think it's really cool that we got a DLC surrounding Halloween, and I think it can be quite scary to play. My main issue with this game is that I'm not a fan of the Halloween designs, especially for the animatronics like Dreadbear, but this does not take away from the fact that it is a good and fun game. While it is quite simple and doesn't do anything extraordinary from the other games, I still think it stands as a good Halloween DLC, so for that reason I'm putting it in good. Okay, moving on to one of the more unusual FNAF games, which is Five Nights at Freddy's Special Delivery, which is obviously the FNAF game that you could play on like your phone or an iPad. Personally not a big fan of this game. I think the concept is really interesting, and obviously you can see what they were going for about having the animatronics like right in your room with you. I think that's a really cool design, but I don't think it's that scary. I don't think it necessarily works. I can really appreciate what they were going for, but I still don't think that makes it scary. And it's not really fun just gameplay wise. It's kind of janky to be sat there on an iPad or your phone, and it's kind of hard to play. So that being said, I'm gonna put it in bad. I think it just doesn't hold up with the rest of the Five Nights at Freddy's games. As I said, I really appreciate what they were going for, but gameplay wise, it is not a good Five Nights at Freddy's game. Okay, let's move on to Freddy in Space and Fury's Rage. I'm going to do these two games together because it's going to be a really easy decision for me. These games are just not my thing. I like the designs of the games. I think they do look quite cool. Like, I feel like they look quite retro and like 80s, but these are just not my thing, and I just have got no interest in playing them, sadly. So they're just going to stay in not my thing because I don't necessarily think they're bad games, but I can't see myself playing them anytime soon. Now let's move on to Security Breach, aka the buggiest FNAF game of all time. Did anybody manage to finish this game who wasn't on a PC? I tried playing this on the PlayStation and it took so much longer than it should have to finally get it finished. The amount of bugs in it was just a joke. I mean, everybody knows this by now, how buggy this game was and the amount of problems that it had. I think because of this, it really let itself down. I really love the concept of the game, and obviously it being first like semi-open world FNAF game and being able to run around the Pizzeria, that really stood out from the other Five Nights at Freddy's games. And I remember being so hyped for this game, and I do still love it, but there's so much to it that is so disappointing at the same time. I think a lot of the game sometimes feels a little bit repetitive, and parts of the Pizzeria can feel a bit empty, like there's no real threat. A lot of the animatronics stay in the same place and they're quite easy to avoid. And obviously with having the safety of jumping in Freddy's chest, there was very, very little parts of this game where I was actually scared. It had a couple of elements to it which were scary. Obviously there was the endoskeleton section is the scariest part of the game, and I really enjoyed that part. But other than that, I feel like this game really lacks that fear factor. I absolutely love the animatronic designs, but I don't think necessarily any of them are scary, apart from the endoskeletons, as I said. So it's really hard to rank this game because I've got a love-hate relationship with it. It also has my favourite animatronic of all time, Roxy. She's my favourite, and I do really love the glam rock designs. I think they look really good, and this game visually looks like really stunning sometimes when it actually does work. So with all that being said, it makes it really difficult to rank this game. I think without the bugs, this would be a good game. So I'm going to put it in good because I think without the bugs, this is still a good game at its core. Sadly, it let itself down with so many bugs. And continuing with the Security Breach theme, we're moving on to obviously the DLC Ruin, which I've been playing only recently. I've been really enjoying it. This one also still has a lot of bugs in it as well. Maybe not as much as the original game, but there's definitely still issues with it, which obviously sucks if you're a fan of Security Breach and we're hoping for a game with less bugs to maybe actually get to experience properly what we should have got with Security Breach, but sadly we still didn't get that. Maybe it's fine for PC users, but I know for console users that's definitely not the case. I've been really enjoying this game so far. I think it has some really cool animatronic designs in it, but it is still very much the same gameplay wise as Security Breach. I don't necessarily think this is a bad game, I just don't think it's anything outstanding, and I'm tempted to put it in would not play again because I just don't think it does anything different that Security Breach hasn't already done, and there's nothing really making me want to go back to it. I think it's just an okay DLC. It has some interesting moments in it, but apart from that, I don't think it's a FNAF game that I would necessarily recommend anybody to play, so I'm going to put it in would not play again. Now let's move on to the second installment of the Five Nights at Freddy's VR, which is Help Wanted 2. I've been watching playthroughs of this very recently. Obviously it came out not long ago, and I've been really enjoying it. I am desperate to play it myself because it looks really good. I think it's almost massively improved from the first VR game, which wasn't a bad game. I think it just seems a lot more fun. Not that the first one wasn't fun, but it just seems to have gotten even better. And I'm really tempted to put this in Masterpiece because I just think overall it's a really good VR game and a Five Nights at Freddy's game. It's got all the elements that make a good Five Nights at Freddy's game. So for me, it's going in Masterpiece. Now moving on to our last game, which is FNaF Plus, which very much seems like it's got cancelled. However, somebody brought out a fan-made version of what they think the game might have looked like, which I very recently played on my channel. I'll leave a link in the description below if anybody wants to check that out. And I really enjoyed this game. It's the most scared I've been in a while playing a Five Nights at Freddy's game, and I love what they've done bringing the first Five Nights at Freddy's game back, but obviously improving on it and redesigning some of the animatronics just to look a bit scarier, and obviously improving some of the gameplay mechanics. And I think this really holds up among the other really good Five Nights at Freddy's games. It's gone back to its core, what makes the first Five Nights at Freddy's game so good, but improved upon it. So I think for me, this is going to have to go in Masterpiece, despite not actually being a game by Scott Cawthon. I hope I'm saying Cawthon right, by the way. Apologies if I'm not. And with that being said, that is my list done. I'm really happy with it. Feel like there's some controversial takes in there, but you guys will have to let me know down in the comments below. Obviously, please remember these are just my opinions. You don't have to agree with them. Please let me know if you agree or disagree with them down in the comments below. I'm curious to see your guys' opinions and what you think of the games and whether I got this completely wrong or not. But that's my list, and I really hope you guys enjoyed watching. If you did, please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe, as it really does help me out, and I hope to see you guys in the next one. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!